Welcome, my name is Theocharis Grigoriadis, and today we're going to discuss joint research and the policy implications of some joint research I have been doing with a Russian colleague, Dmitry Veselov. And the topic of today's lecture has the title of this paper, and we call it The Political Economy of Brain Drain. Brain drain has been essentially a very important aspect of economic transformations. So brain drain essentially suggests that human capital, people, move from economy A to economy B, that economy A, for example, is losing this human capital, which then becomes a gain for economy B. So brain drain is considered from the perspective of the economy that loses, the economy of origin, right? So far, immigration studies have been dealing, or migration studies, broadly speaking, have been dealing with ways that migrants and refugees are integrating themselves into host societies, into destination countries. But what about the countries that stay behind? What about the countries that lose them? What about the countries that have paid for their education and will not use them for their own economic progress? So this is the question. So we are kind of reversing the problematic here, and we are dealing with the loss of human capital from the perspective of the economy of origin. And then the next question we want to put forward is the following, since the topic of the Grundlagenvorlesung is mobility and order, right? So this topic fits very well to both words of this, to both keywords of the Grundlagenvorlesung this semester. So, is this politically motivated? That's where the political economy comes in. In political economy, we care about the interests of politicians. We want to explore why politicians become politicians. And of course, the answer is very simple, because they can make much more money with the same set of skills compared to any other job they would have gotten in the private sector. So it's a very good deal to be a politician if you can do that. So at the same time, of course, in political economy, we care about institutions. And we also care about a very important aspect. How does one become a politician? What is the logic of political competition? How do different organized interest groups compete to each other in order to gain power? And of course, in order to gain power, what do you need? You need some skills. You must be a bit smart, or a bit qualified, or a bit educated, or maybe not. This depends actually on the type of the political regime, which is going to be also a very important parameter in this discussion that we're going to have today. Because of course, this is a heavily mathematical paper. I have taken most of the math to make our lives easier today, but at the same time, I want us to focus a bit on the concepts, because I think math is only, we're not a mathematical department here or an informatics department, we're a social science, humanities department. Therefore, mathematics is a tool to bring up interesting concepts. So, exactly. So, and to come back to this political economy discussion, okay, how about brain drain? Is brain drain politically motivated? And the answer to this question that we give in this paper is yes. So brain drain can be politically motivated. By who? This is the important question here. Who has an interest to kick you out of your country? Who has an interest for you never to come back? And this is actually very interesting, because everybody says, yeah, we want highly qualified people in our country, we want to grow, yes. If you read all the World Bank policy reports, they all say, yeah, we need lots of well-trained people in this economy, in developing or transitional economy A, and it's a real pity that they live in these rich countries up in the global north, in the northwestern part of the globe. Why do they live there, whereas they would make a much bigger impact here? And the answer to that is very simple. It's politics, it's institutions. And this is basically the reason why these very smart people of economy A do not want to come back, and they prefer to stay in the global north. And of course, this is only one of the answers. I mean, we don't claim to have the answer to global brain drain, but I think we are covering a pretty important share of the whole picture. Okay, and in order to motivate us with some nice pictures, not so nice, I'm sure the people there are not feeling very well in the pictures I'm going to show you, some interesting pictures. So this is a boat from Cuba to Miami. And this is a boat from the Cold War carrying Cuban refugees from Fidel Castro's socialist paradise to the shores of Florida in the United States. So why did these people find themselves in that boat? What do you think? What made them jump into that boat? I want an answer. Manuel? The Cuban Revolution. And why they didn't stay? It's a revolution. Everybody should be happy there. No? You disagree? It's not the paradise? Leon?
Rich Cuban people, or like people against Fidel Castro, and they didn't like what the Máximo leader was doing in Cuba.
So they didn't like Castro, yeah. Or maybe Castro didn't like them, or both.
Yeah, like both.
Oleksiy, what do you think?
Yeah, okay, I have the same answer. Just bad conditions in the country that came after the Cuban Revolution.
Okay, so and what was So bad conditions, can you make that a bit more specific? What does that mean? Why leave Cuba? What do you want to escape? Because you have your house there, you have property, you have your social network. What makes you basically abandon everything and come to the US where you know nobody and you don't really know what will happen to you? Yes?
I mean, they would lose probably all the privileges they had in the country. Like, it doesn't make any sense to stay there any longer.
Okay, it doesn't make any sense because they would lose. They would basically not be economic elites anymore. They would just everything would be essentially nationalized by the government, so deprivatized, as you said. Yes.
That was like a very emotional thing, but very moral, high standard that they were searching for. And they really behind their whole lives was better than living.
Exactly. So there is also a moral dimension in the sense that some of them had ideological differences or didn't believe in communism at all. Yeah, that may also be the case. But at the same time, what did Castro want them there? What do you think? Did he try to stop them in the port? Please don't leave. Don't leave. Did he do that? Or he basically said, okay, perfect, better for me. Yeah? Your name?
Tato.
Tato, yes?
And they were probably class which was competing bourgeois class, which was threatening Castro's stability there.
So some of them or most of them were bourgeois, educated people that...
Also like part of Batista's regime.
Or part of the previous regime that didn't want to be there. Yeah, okay, yeah, that's probably very correct. Yeah, what other ideas? Yes, in the back, your name?
Not regarding your question. Do you think you can maybe make your microphone a little bit quieter?
It's very loud. Okay, I thought loud was good. Okay, like this. There. Better. Better. Like this. Okay, like this. Perfect. Okay, so I have already a loud voice. So yeah, I mean it's a critical. Yeah, it's a cumulative thing. Okay, so So these were bourgeois, these were people that would probably have an interest to do what? To be dissidents, to undermine, to organize against. Yes, Leo.
And some of them were also former followers or like supporters of the former Cuban dictator. His name was Fulgencio Batista.
Yeah, a colleague said it. Yes, exactly. Okay, so we have also regime supporters of the previous regime. Okay, and of course the US during the Cold War would only welcome those people. They would give them benefits. There is a whole literature in the American political economy explaining why the Cubans always had a super special status among the different ethnic groups that were that were coming to the shores of the United States to seek refuge from their own governments. Okay, so this is episode number 1. Episode number 2. These are two pictures. The left picture is a Russian club in Paris in 1920, and the right picture is again refugees from the Russian Empire on the Greek island of Lemnos in the middle of the Aegean Sea. Again, 1920. So where are these people running from? Where are they running? I mean, the gentlemen and ladies on the left picture seem to be quite wealthy, or at least well off, so they don't run. The other people seem to have just stopped running. So where are they running from? Those Russian people, or peoples of the Russian Empire, to be more specific, of the former Russian Empire. Where are they running from? Yes?
Civil War.
The Civil War. And why are they not? Why? Yeah, why? Civil War, yeah, of course, you want to... But what is the threat there? Who is leaving? Why leave? They are caught in the middle, and why do they leave? Manuel?
I would say because of the terror from both sides of the Civil War, because a lot of time it's only said that it's a red terror that made people flee, but there was also the white terror on the territories that the monarchists and the other parts of the white movement had. So people were just saving their lives.
So let's take the Paris people. For the Paris people, we definitely know what they were escaping from. They were escaping from, as you said, the Red Terror. So these were people that were connected to the monarchy that they didn't like, or they were not liked by the winning mobilized people of the Red Army, of the Red Movement, and they escape to Paris. And as we know very well from history, there is a whole literature about Ruski Paris, about Paris of the 1920s as the core, as the new capital of white Russian diaspora, probably together with New York and San Francisco. And on the left-hand side, we have again people that were going through Turkey and Greece into the west again, escaping through the Black Sea route, again, the Russian Empire. And the developments, as you said, of the Civil War. And these are usually also people from white-dominated areas. So we know, and it's interesting very much, so the Russian refugees from the Russian Revolution and the Civil War was the first big refugee wave in European and global history. I mean, migration was always the case. I mean, people migrated, and particularly the Europeans migrated a lot to different parts of the world, from Australia to North America. But the first time that big migration waves reached the West, so the Western Europe is not leaving, but somebody is coming to Western Europe, was with the Russian Revolution and the Russian Civil War. You know, I mean, there is this anecdote, I don't know whether this is true or not, about how the word bistrot in Paris appeared. Because these were the small cafes, and the people from the former Russian Empire were saying bistra, 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 bistra. They wanted to have coffee very quickly in the morning and breakfast. So from this bistra, bistrot came up as a word. I don't think it's an urban legend. I actually tend to believe that. So let us come now to to set up the basic framework of our question. So is brain drain a strategic choice of democracies and autocracies? Is brain drain a strategic choice of governments? What we do here, the way we understand brain drain is as an exit option for high-skilled workers facing very high political barriers or excessive taxation. In an economy, we understand two types of workers: high-skilled workers who can become entrepreneurs or run for political office against the incumbent, and low-skilled workers who can retain their status or move up and become entrepreneurs. The government decides a tax vector for high and low-skilled entrepreneurs and sets the entry threshold for politics. In political turnover, what you may have, so in democracies, how does political turnover happen? It happens with elections in democracies and with revolutions in dictatorships. Revolutions, of course, are always much costlier than elections. And then if we want to move a bit more in this introduction that basically gives you partly the results, so the assumptions and the results of the paper of this research program. So human capital theory so we're proposing here a human capital theory of political change. A brain drain is an equilibrium strategy for governments that want to increase their tenure in office. What do you think about that? Do you agree or you disagree? Do you think that really brain drain is not just an individual choice of people seeking to find better money elsewhere, but it can be also connected to the absence of political competition and mobility through the political process? So this is what we argue here. We argue here that the dictator wants you to leave. Even in a democracy, of course, brain drain can take place. In a democracy, brain drain can be the outcome of big inequality, which again, of course, creates or preserves a political economic class on the top of power without the possibility of replacement. A very important assumption in political economy is that politicians, when they stay in office, they don't want to leave that office. They just want to be there forever, if possible. Because, of course, just by being in that particular office, they are in a position to accumulate rents. They are in a position to accumulate benefits beyond their official wage. And exactly this extra benefit of the political process makes it very attractive to do what? To want to get rid of your potential opponents. And where are the potential opponents going to come from? They're going, of course, to come from the organized interest groups of the society. As we know very well in the history of political economy, it's not that just some people just wake up and say, okay, let's go have a protest, because we have nothing better to do with our lives. There are particular economic interests connected to that. If you look the whole history of the Industrial Revolution and the way that democratization happens in the end of the 19th and the beginning of the 20th century, this is basically what? You have the nobles and the feudal people saying so basically the entrepreneurs that become, so this new class that gains a lot of money with the Industrial Revolution comes to the nobility and feudal people and say, look, I want also to decide now. Now I also have more money than you, or the same money as you. So I want to be part of this process. So this is why political economic change happens. Because a new group of people suddenly has a lot of money. So if we just focus in if we focus on the phenomenon of brain drain, and of course the thinking about brain drain starts from dictatorships. That's where we start from, right? Because it's a cleaner, unfortunately, slate to think about. What is a dictatorship? A non-competitive political system. It doesn't matter how smart you are. It doesn't matter whether you have top grades or whether you are an inventor or whether you are XYZ. It doesn't really matter if your dad or your mom don't have connections in the party or in this particular institution, the secret police or whatever, call it as you want. You're not going to become anything in the political system of your country. So, end of story. So, and of course, then we are starting thinking, okay, then you observe brain drain, right? So brain drain is not just a question of people abandoning the country because they cannot become entrepreneurs necessarily, because one could say, okay, they could make some compromises and still earn a lot of money without necessarily entering politics. But, of course, the question is that if you are very, very good, the dictator knows that you will think about becoming a politician. The dictator knows that you will want to have a say on how public money is being spent and how public policy is being decided. Dictators are not stupid, they're very smart. They are there for a reason. So they know what you think. So, and exactly because they know what you think, they are going to make it very costly for you to even think about joining the political process. They can say, if you want to contribute to the country, you can become a very successful entrepreneur. But then you will say, okay, with this set of skills, I could make 3 times more money in Germany or the US. Why should I be here? The only reason for me to be here, your answer could be, is because I can also then, at a later stage, become a politician and produce impact. And, of course, have the rents of politics, which are not insignificant. So, and then the dictator responds to you, no, this is not possible because I want to be here, not you. So this is where the game we're describing starts. So, and then your question is, aren't dictatorships taking a risk by following that strategy, by basically telling you to go? Yes, they are taking a risk. Because if high levels of human capital go, the economy will be smaller. But the dictators don't care about that, as long as the economy is not small enough so that they have a problem paying for schools, paying for utilities, being able to provide the basic public goods. So, I mean, when I say paying, subsidizing. And why they don't care about the economy being so small? Because it's not a democracy. What are you going to do? Are you going to go to the street? Yes, okay, then go to jail. And then lose money and lose perspectives. So you're not going to do anything. You're not. They make it very costly for you to react. So what is the option? The option is to leave. And this is what they want. They want you to leave and never come back. They want you, so they're completely fine with you giving your skills to another economy, as long as they can keep their bank accounts in Switzerland or elsewhere. So I think it sounds convincing in some ways why brain drain can be a strategic choice for dictatorships. What about democracies? Why brain drain could be also a strategy in democracies? We mentioned, first of all, inequality, and we mentioned, unfortunately, what is also an observation that we are having in the last few years is that democracies are kind of less democratic as they used to be. So it's not the same anymore. Why? Because even in a democratic system, first of all, economic mobility, since Aristotle, the Greek political philosopher, economic mobility has been always the core of democracy, or has been a very important part of the democratization process. Why do I care about democracy? Yeah, because I'm producing income and I want to have this income protected through institutions. That's why I care about the political regime, obviously. Otherwise, why should I care about it? So, in that sense, I think it's very important to think about brain drain in democracies. There, you need basically to go a bit deeper and think about aspects such as what? Such as the financial system, such as healthcare provisions, such as, again, of course, the cost of entering the political process. Democracies, and we also know very well that, how important it is the role of media in becoming a politician, even in a democratic political system. Yes?
Do you define brain drain as just an emigration of people out of the country or a migration of qualified people?
Qualified. Yeah. And it is obvious because these are the ones that can find easier jobs elsewhere. So their opportunity cost of staying in their economy is bigger. So they have a better outside option. Why should I stay here and fight you when I can be in Silicon Valley and make much more money? If you go to the Silicon Valley, you will see Russians, Iranians, from all the dictatorships. Russians, Iran. If you go to the Google campus, in the Mensa of Google, in Mountain View, California, close to Stanford, you will see from all the dictatorships. Name one dictatorship and you will find somebody there. I have seen it. So, and exactly this, in our interpretation, this is why this is happening. Of course, democracies, there are no perfect regimes. Democracies also have their flaws. So redistributive democracies that impose progressive taxation schedules in favor of low-skilled workers may piss high-skilled workers off. So they may facilitate brain drain towards elitist democracies. And when we use this term elitist democracies, we want also to rethink a bit about this term. We're mostly mentioning countries like of the Anglo-Saxon type. So soft dictatorships facilitate the transition of low-skilled workers to entrepreneurship while punishing high-skilled workers that intend to challenge the political authority of the incumbent. And soft dictatorships also have the highest brain drain rates compared to the other three types of political economic systems, followed by redistributive democracies. Of course, and this is also a distinction that we're still working on. We have some preliminary results that I will not share with you right now on this distinction between soft and hard dictatorships. Yes? So basically, a soft dictatorship is a dictatorship that will not jail you automatically for running into a protest, but is, of course, a non-competitive political system that, again, has the same characteristics like a hard dictatorship without, the difference is the degree of repression. The way that they will engage their police and security apparatus in cracking protest and revolutionary activity. So this is the difference. And of course, redistributive versus elitist democracy. Redistributive democracy, you have to think of continental Europe, more or less, where you have a relatively generous welfare state and provisions for low-skilled workers vis-à-vis the more elitist approach that has been followed by Australia, the US, and to some extent the UK, where they basically favor high-skilled workers much more than low-skilled workers. So, of course, there is a lot of literature on migration and political economy, and as I said, of course, usually the focus is primarily on immigration rather than on emigration. Here we are basically focusing on emigration, whereas most of the literature is focusing on immigration, right? So skilled migration from developing countries to developed one has intensified already from the beginning of this century. So global migration rate remains stable until 2012, where this paper was written, the share of foreign-born immigrants in developed countries has tripled since 1960, and this immigration is increasingly skilled. Of course, there are economic reasons, higher skills premium, and better living conditions in developed countries. So rich countries are going to reward you much more than your own country. I mean, this is simply a reality, and it's an unchangeable reality. So, and destination countries attract global talent using the migration policy instruments. So what is a migration policy instrument? A Baltic instrument. So Ukrainians go to cities where Ukrainians already are, right? So there is this very classical. So can I predict where, for example, the Armenians will go? Okay, they will go to California because that's where most Armenians already are. So how difficult is that? Or where will the Poles go? The Poles will go to Chicago, to Illinois, because this is where the Poles are, right? So the Midwest. So, I mean, you have this, actually, when I first read about this quantitative methodology, I said, okay, I mean, do we really need a mathematical tool to show? I mean, that's kind of self-evident. But yeah, I mean, it's basically, that's how we basically predict migration flows, ethnic migration flows. I mean, with the example, of course, of the US, the biggest migration destination in the world. So, and of course, and as I have just told you, emigration here rather than immigration. So what do we do in this paper? We are providing a theoretical foundation for the effects of brain drain on the institutions, on the country of origin. This is an opportunity, of course, so we show that the type of the political regime and the level of income inequality affects the emergence of long-run equilibria with high and low immigration rates of skilled workers. And this paper gives also a theoretical basis for the empirical literature, providing a link between the political regime's immigration rates and changes in political and economic institutions. So here, I mean, so we have kind of divided in the paper. So Dimitri wrote the static benchmark and I wrote the dynamic resilience component. So I'm going to walk you through a bit, not for purposes of you to, not of basically teaching you the model, but of making you understand basically what is going on. I mean, I think you've already understood most of it already. So agents are divided into two groups, high-skilled with a share S in the total population and low-skilled agents with a share 1 minus S in the total population. And of course, all high-skilled workers are distributed according to their occupational choice between three groups: new entrants in politics, entrepreneurs, or high-skilled emigrants. Skilled agents that become entrepreneurs receive a pre-tax income which is normalized to 1. Low-skilled workers, pre-tax income is equal to theta multiplied by ET, where theta is the parameter showing the level of income inequality in society. And of course, a government imposes a policy vector P that includes what? The tax rate, the transfer money, and the entry barrier and barriers to emigration. So, because of course, I mean, the theoretical choice would be, I mean, you could argue against me and say, okay, then why leave them? I mean, the Soviet Union made such a big fuss of not letting people go. The East Germans and the Russians, the Soviets, built the wall of Berlin exactly not to let people go. We live in the city that had a wall to trap people not to go from the GDR, right? So, I mean, we see all of it all of us see it every day. I mean, it's traces, it's invisible traces. So, yes, of course, dictatorships in particular are not going to give up so easily. No, they want you here. They want you obedient. And they want you to give their skills to them and not have ambitions and not compete with them, of course. But the other question is, of course, the other part of the story is your interests, your incentives, and how exactly this is where this difference between soft and hard dictatorships plays a very important role. So, and of course, we have also transfer payments to skilled workers, and also R in the last line is also the rent flow to the incumbent politician. And what is the very important decision here is the decision to emigrate. Yes?
I have a question to the last slide. How do you differentiate between high-skilled immigrants and the rest of the
Emigrants, yes.
Yeah, like P and E, like, do they not correlate between each other?
So basically what we have is that we have high skilled, which is a percentage, S, and low skilled, which is a percentage that sums up to 1 with S, which is 1 minus S. And then within this S group, you may have 3 subgroups. So you have the people that become politicians, make it. You have a share of those that stay where they are, E. And then you have a share of people that just go. So these are the 3 subgroups of the high-skilled group. Okay. So, and then of course, the government, on the other hand, is interested in what? The government must decide how much they will tax entrepreneurs and how much they are going money from the money they will collect, they will give back to the low-skilled, which of course makes the high-skilled angry. And also, what is the barrier to immigration? So how restrictive this government is in order to let you go. I mean, so for example, the Soviet Union was suspecting anybody that would go to a conference, or the GDR that they would just defect, or they would just stay and never come back. I mean, so this kind of thing, right? So, yeah. So how costly it is. So the decision to emigrate depends, of course, on the relative payoff from emigration. So what is, and this is defined by this expression Vm of t. T is for the time period. So what is the concept here? The concept we are dealing with here is, what is my opportunity cost to be here? What is the wage waiting for me out there? And which is something I'm losing by staying here. So what is my opportunity cost of staying? So this is a very important question that is driving this game, this theoretical model. And of course, the probability to stay in power, so in the context of a revolutionary activity, so what happens if a revolution occurs and what happens if a revolution is not occurring. So, and here we have the timing of the game. So, and we have the timing. So if the political regime is autocracy, then the nature chooses the type of autocracy. It's hard or soft. So here you see a very important part when we set up a game in a game theory context. I mean, it's called sequencing, right? So we need to say the steps. First, we do this, and then 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 we do this, so that all the moving is clear. So in every theoretical model, when you write a game, you need to show the different moves. So, and of course, for a given type of political regime, the incumbent government chooses the policy vector, which we have seen. Each citizen gets true information about the individual cost of immigration, and they also get a noisy signal of the type of the autocracy. High-skilled agents decide either to participate in collective actions in protest, to democratize the regime, or be involved in entrepreneurship, or to emigrate. And if the revolution is successful, the policy vector is determined as in a democratic setup. If not, it stays unchanged. The production process occurs, entrepreneurs pay taxes, and everybody is receiving their final payoff. So this is how this political game is developed in terms of its sequencing. So, and of course here, what we have, I mean, what is very important, I mean, we have also, I mean, in order to derive these equilibria, I don't want to get you tired with too much math, I mean, but I mean, in order to derive this equilibrium, we must have some values for its outcome and for its scenario. So we're developing this multi-level scenario. This is what a game is essentially. So we need to have certain payoffs for its outcome and then compare those outcomes ex post and to derive what is going to happen. Okay, so this is what we're doing. And of course, we need to know the threshold of the individual cost of emigration. We need to know how costly emigration is. We need to know what the value of a really high-skilled person in a particular economy is. And we need, of course, based on these two values, the threshold of migration and the value of the high-skilled person, define the optimal emigration rate. And here, of course, in proposition 1, in a democracy, a higher level of income inequality between high and low-skilled workers leads to a higher level of redistribution, to a higher level of brain drain, and to a lower level of average incomes. Moreover, the higher outside option for emigration leads to more intensive brain drain and to a lower level of average income. Okay, so this is basically a very simple, without this noise of dictatorship that we have. I mean, it's more fun to study that, but of course, yeah, I mean, democracy is also fun in a different way, I hope. So, and exactly. So this is the first proposition, and of course, I mean, I want to, so, and also when we are thinking in terms of autocracies, then, I mean, what we do is basically we think in terms of a tax schedule, so different tax rates for different levels of autocracy, which of course then make it more costly to revolt when it is, and at the same time more attractive to live when the autocracy is hard as opposed to when the autocracy is soft. But of course then what comes counter to that is also the fact that also the cost of exit, the cost of emigration is much higher in a hard autocracy. So a hard autocracy wants both to repress you a lot and not let you go, which is a very bad thing, right? So as we know historically. So we are considering here different equilibrium outcomes. So, and here, for example, we may also take the scenario that a soft autocracy may actually want you to go. Why? Because they are weighing your presence in the political process as very counterproductive for their legitimacy and further existence. So we may actually have in this proposition a hard autocracy that sets high barriers to emigration, high exit barriers, but a soft autocracy that basically tells you, go. So of the type of Fidel Castro, right? So Fidel Castro was not really purging and killing people on the streets like Stalin, but so he was more or less a soft dictator, but at the same time, of course, he didn't want to be competed by the bourgeois dissidents had they stayed and not gone to Miami. So now let us move a bit further down and let's think about, about dynamic regime resilience. How about taking this game and thinking about it over an infinite horizon? I mean, this is a standard technique that we do when we solve institutional problems in economics. So we don't care just about what is going to happen in one period, but we want to know what will happen forever. Of course, you may answer, okay, can you really predict what is going to happen forever? I mean, economists will tell you yes or maybe, but yeah, I mean, so the goal is also, of course, I mean, it's not so much about what is going to happen in the future per se, but it's more about how am I going to evaluate the future from a presence perspective. Because, I mean, when I'm going to make the decision, I'm going to make it now. And because I'm going to make the decision now, I also want to know all the possible scenarios in this distant horizon that may happen. I mean, so I want to calculate all the different perspectives and aspects of uncertainty that may come into play here. So this is very important. And Yeah, so basically, again, we have the government on the one hand and the workers on the other hand, and the workers can be skilled or unskilled, right? So, and the government maximizes its payoff by making the workers, the high-skilled workers, to emigrate so that it stays in power. The high-skilled workers can become entrepreneurs and run for political office, whereas the unskilled workers cannot. The skilled workers may have job opportunities abroad, which is not the case for unskilled workers. Government decides again a policy vector. So, so basically this game follows up a bit on the previous one, but as I said, it also relates to this infinite dynamic horizon. So, and let us a bit see here the different outcomes that we have, which I think are very interesting. So we have basically the interaction between the government and the high-skilled worker, which we call the entrepreneur. And the low-skilled worker is basically a residual category, because his voice, I apologize for those of you that have a sensitivity for low-skilled workers, his voice in this game doesn't matter. So what matters is what the government and the high-skilled workers think. Okay. So what are the different strategies of the entrepreneur, and what are the different, what are the strategies? So here it's a very nice table. A part of me doesn't like it because it's a bit it's very simplifying, but another part of me likes it because it gives the message much more clearly than the different blocks of text and math that you may see. So for pedagogical and communication reasons, I had it in the slide. So what do we see here? On the one hand, we see the different strategies of the government. The government does what? The government imposes taxation and cost to go, the exit cost, the cost to emigration. And we see here different combinations. High, low, 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 high, high, low, high. Okay, so we see these four different combinations. So the tax rate can be high and the emigration barrier can be low, the opposite, both low, both high. What are the strategies of the entrepreneur? One, because of course, the government is what? The government is the government because it chooses first. So the entrepreneur, the high-skilled worker, can do what? The high-skilled worker can basically either go, migrate, leave, can do business, can say, okay, I can be co-opted. What's wrong with that? I can work here. I don't care. Or I say, okay, or he or she can say, okay, I will sow them. I will topple them. I will run and kick them out. And then what is the outcome? Brain drain is when the entrepreneur leaves the economy. Underdevelopment or centralization can be the outcomes when the entrepreneur says, okay, I'll just be co-opted and do nothing, just make money in any way I can without leaving. And in the case of political competition, is a toss. You may win or you may end up in jail. It's a toss. So it's with probability xi. Okay, so that's it. So, and here, what do I do? We are deriving. So these are the one period payoffs for all that match all the different equilibrium outcomes: brain drain, turnover, centralization, re-election, and underdevelopment. And this is again the timing of the game, which is, of course, which basically tells you what the government. So basically, it tells you the sequencing of the moves. We have a high or low. A high or a low state in the beginning, and then we have the decision of the government, and then the entrepreneur observes, and makes a decision. And then we take into account all the scenario, what the skilled worker that stays does, because the one that goes, it's game over. Brain drain, game over. He never comes back. So for the domestic economy, he disappears forever, right? So now let's focus on the one that stays. The one that stays can do what? Can do business or go for politics. And if he or she goes for politics, then he can either win or lose. So we are basically building the game tree, more or less. And here we have the different outcomes. So what are the outcomes for the possible equilibria under, what are the possible outcomes that we observe exactly? So we have, so here we have the outcomes, and here you have also the different choices that the two players make. So what are the choices that the entrepreneur or the skilled worker can make? Do business, enter politics, or leave? In that context, what does the government choose? To centralize, to underdevelop, or turn over? So, and then under autocracy, what is the difference? What are the different payoffs for the entrepreneur? To leave, migration, revolution, or nomenclatura, which basically means that there is, so this is basically when the government imposes itself and represses, and underdevelopment, and when the worker leaves, and revolution. So in here we have the different some properties. So democracy has free exit, so there is no barrier, exit barrier or immigration barrier for a democracy. The political turnover in democracy and revolution in autocracy are payoff equivalent for the government. So if a government loses, it loses, and it doesn't care if it happened legally or illegally, right? So, so from a political economy, we are not, we care about law, but this is not a legal exercise. So if a government loses, it's equally pissed off if it lost because it was the democratic process, or if it lost because some people just entered the presidential palace and kicked out everybody. So, and if brain drain, migration, or political turnover revolution occurs, there is no equilibrium reversal in the future. So you cannot undo a revolution. I mean, in the game, the way we have it, you cannot undo a political turnover. You cannot undo the brain drain migration. So, and here we also define the trade-off between political survival and democracy, because of course we want to show what is better for the particular agent, and we also have this regime comparison here with this. So basically, this is what? So this is the salary a smart people gets abroad, right? So which is basically driving their decision to leave or stay. And then what do we have here? We have, so this is the salary that you will get abroad if you are coming from an autocracy, and this is the salary that you will get abroad if you are coming from a democracy. And of course, if you are coming from an autocracy, you are willing to settle with much less, obviously. So you're just going to go, okay, I will take it, right? So if you come from a democracy, you are going to think it twice. I mean, you may still go, but it's different. And then you are comparing that to exactly, so you are comparing this wage and this wage here respectively to the best scenario that may happen. This is for the entrepreneur E, and this is nomenclatura, and this is revolution, and so on, right? So you are comparing this expected wage to the best of two scenarios that may happen as a result of this political competition game. So what is very important here is exactly to think about the irreversibility of brain drain, which is something that you may agree or you may disagree. I imposed it for purposes of simplicity here. And also the threat of revolution, which is also, in authoritarian research, the threat of revolution is a very powerful driver that explains a lot of behavior, a lot of political economic behavior in dictatorships. So, and here we have the dynamic equilibria. I don't want to so basically what we do, we define using some mathematics and comparisons, we are defining a threshold for what? For the private value of holding office for the entrepreneur. So what is the incentive? What is what is the optimal private value of holding office for the entrepreneur that makes him or her indifferent between doing something and not doing something, between living and staying? Of course, the other answer would be, if we wanted to make this, game even more difficult, one could say, and how does the entrepreneur know that he or she will become a politician in the host economy? So, and then the answer would be, in that case, the salary differences are so much smaller in the host economy than in the economy of origin that even this possible loss from not entering politics from 1 or 2 generations can be compromised. It's not so big in the end of the day. Yes?
Do you have an assumption that a person is as highly skilled in business as in politics? It seems like that's the same. So I'm good in business, so I have good outside options, but I'm also a good revolutionary.
So basically the idea here is that if you are poor, you don't have money to become a politician. So you have skills, therefore you can accumulate money, and you can use this money and skills, of course, to enter politics. Because, of course, the political process requires a certain vector of skills and resources that low-skilled workers don't have. So this is assumption number 1. In terms of politics, we don't really check how skilled the incumbent is, in this particular. So we just start the game with this assumption that the incumbent is the incumbent. I don't know how he or she is there. It's there. And the question is how costly it is to kick that person out through democracy, through the democratic channel or through the authoritarian channel. So this is the idea. It's a much simpler thing than what you're thinking. It's much simpler because if we had, for example, what you would say is, okay, let's compare the skills of the incumbent. So, if I want to follow your thought a bit, maybe stop me if I'm wrong. Okay, let's compare the skills of the incumbent to the skills of the entrepreneur. Yeah, actually, we don't do that. We're a bit agnostic for the incumbent. He or she is a black box. He's just there for different reasons.
Did you have 2 steps? The first step was, I leave the country, I don't leave. And then you said, if I don't leave as a highly skilled person, I decide to either just do business or run for politics.
And at that point of time, if I decide to do business,
Yes.
is that the best choice for the dictatorship?
So basically all these are equilibrium solutions. So all these scenarios can happen according to the specific conditions we set. For example, let me...
You call it underdevelopment, I don't understand that.
Yeah, so underdevelopment, yeah. It's basically...
If I stay in the country, I'm highly skilled, and I opt to stay out of politics.
Yes.
That's the best scenario for the dictatorship, isn't it?
Yeah, the point is if it is the best scenario for me as well, right? Because in order to have an equilibrium, everybody must be happy.
Yes, and how
Because if one of the two of us is not happy, then I will go or you will go. So the idea is that when we are deciding on this equilibrium outcome, we need to make sure that both of us are staying. And in order to, and not only for one period, also in the long run. So this, for example, this is the democracy brain drain game, and this is the autocracy brain drain game. They are not very different, but they are also to some extent different. So so all these equilibria that we observe, these are equilibria according to our proofs that stay. So you may have this is what we observe, right? So we have countries that have very smart people in the economy and very bad people in politics. We see this all the time. And this underdevelopment is, it's a stylized expression. It's not that they are all very, very poor, but they are less developed than what, I come from such a country, Greece originally, right? So it's a country that is much poorer than it could be. Because all the good people are in the economy or they live, and the bad people are in politics. So you see that in different variations, gradations. Maybe the word underdevelopment is a bit strong, but we use it for a purpose just to show that you are performing much worse than what you could have. Yeah. Yes?
So one of your assumptions earlier was that high-skilled workers have better job opportunities outside, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, that's what we say.
Won't you agree that in some context it's not true? Because
Why?
for a researcher to come in Germany, it's way harder to find a job than for someone who is ready to work on a low-skilled, low-paid job, right? Or a lot of Gastarbeiter in Russia, for example, they come from Uzbekistan that are low-skilled workers. They have easier to find a job than someone who has a degree and wants to find a high-paid, qualified job as a researcher, IT programmer, or something like that.
Yeah, I think, I would, the example Uzbekistan and Russia, first of all, they speak the language, which is basically usually, if you see, who can learn German here? It's not easy, right? So if you went to New York 100 years ago, nobody knew English from the migrants. So first of all, if you are low-skilled, it usually means that you are not so good to pick up languages. And when you are not picking up the language of the country that you go, you're kind of predestined to get bad salaries. And of course, this can be the case for one can say that we did have, of course, some waves of low-skilled migration and so on. If you take the Mexican migration, but of course, the question is here that, these are not brain drain, right? So nobody is going to miss, no economy is going to miss 1,000 more plumbers or cleaning ladies. As delight, they're fantastic people, but the economy is going to miss much more technicians, nurses. These are people that are going to be missed in the economy, a nurse or an IT guy. So, yeah. So in that sense, there is low-skilled migration. Obviously, there is. I don't say that it doesn't exist, but what I say is that it's not as politically and development-wise relevant. Yeah. Yeah. Yes?
Do you think about making a further dynamic extension with the play of the entrepreneurs going to political role?
Give me the idea. What do you think?
Well, because we're talking that was a time when the entrepreneurs of business, they of course develop interest in the institutions and how well the business is protected, so they also develop an interest into going into politics. So was there going to be, or do you think about doing a further extension when their entrepreneurs, from the group entrepreneurs, they go into political?
Mm-hmm. So they go to politics and then what?
Well, and then what state would occur? Because then we would have less entrepreneurs and more those who go into politics.
So
because you said there's only one decision. If I'm a high-skilled worker, I either do one or another. But what about the change between those two groups? I either do from those entrepreneurs going into politics.
So basically, in that case, you have a political oligarchy of sorts. So you have exactly what you have in the post-Soviet space, right? You have So there is one elite that is both political and economic, and controls. So it's both in some way. So you have this kind of, but then, yeah, that's it. That's very, yeah, exactly. So in that sense, so what you're basically saying is that, so you have a network maybe. So this is of course an interesting set, because then essentially what you're saying is that when the entrepreneur becomes, so the turnover takes place, right? And then what does the entrepreneur do to make sure that he doesn't lose again? So they create a network. And so they essentially, but of course, that's actually another model. So because essentially, so in that sense, what you're saying is that they will create a network in order to have the entrepreneurs, the future entrepreneurs on their side or on their payroll. And if I'm the former entrepreneur that now has the future entrepreneurs on my payroll, then my power is untouched. But then, of course, the question is then you will have a bidding process with a very rich entrepreneur who wants to take your place. So this is when the game then will, so you're proposing this type of game. So basically what you're saying is, okay, I'm staying, but essentially what I want to do is to create a network. So I want to have I don't want just to have loyalty or this power vertical. I want to have also some level of meritocracy. And this level of meritocracy means that I want to engage, I want to make it very easy for some entrepreneurs to join me. So this, I mean, I'm thinking loudly now, but I mean, essentially what you're saying is basically more or less a more intermediate equilibrium, which is less black and white than what we do, which of course is also, I mean, if this has a lot of math, what you're proposing will have even more, because you need to take partitions of the different sets and so on. But yeah, it's interesting. So basically, in that way, you both stay in power and you grow more, which can be, yeah, I mean, what China used to be, right? A growth dictatorship. Or, yeah, I mean, we have or Singapore, some kind of dictatorships so political systems that are not so open, but still they perform relatively well. I mean, yeah, or maybe, yeah. Actually, I think that's where we are moving. If you are asking me, with the crisis of democracy that we are currently experiencing as a global society, I mean, democracy has never been worse in its perception and its functionality than now. I mean, yeah. So maybe this is something that we are moving towards, a techno-oligarchy with lots of smart people in the middle bow and people on top that are basically giving opportunity. I mean, it's an interesting discussion. Yes.
Good managers that are running big companies will probably run for office because they know how to run things effectively. Is it possible in Germany where the businesses are not really profiting from being like taxed a lot, from not being helped by the government? Would it happen here in Germany?
So basically, can you repeat the first part of your?
Yeah. So what you were saying, probably will be governed by tech, it will be like tech-oligarchy.
So this is not the paper. This is a prediction.
This is a prediction, but okay. But how do you think would it happen in Germany? Like, I think Germany is a very good democracy. So like, it's not very perfect. But it's good functioning.
It's trembling, but yeah, it's the democracy. Yeah.
So the problem is that the brain drain from Germany is already observed. The question is.
German is difficult.
Sorry?
German is difficult. It's a difficult language. That's one of the reasons, basically. People can't learn German. It's difficult. And in addition to that, German being much harder than English to learn or French, it's also the fact that, in Germany, so about this prediction, I think in Europe we are in a bit of a slower motion, which is about to end. Because why? Because our financial system, so in comparative economics, we have this distinction between bank-based or credit-based on the one hand and equity-based financial systems on the other hand. So we are a credit-based system here in Germany or in Japan or in continental Europe. The Americans and the British have an equity-based system. So we are a much more conservative financial system. Therefore, we are offering lower financial opportunities for startuppers, for this new global tech elite that is moving around and so on, right? We are doing a worse job in that than China or the US, our two main competitors. But at the same time, I think that, the discussion that you are basically posing is that, I don't think that Germany is experiencing a brain drain. I think that on the contrary, I think that Germany is receiving a lot of brain gain, is not as much as it could be, in my opinion. And I think, of course, this question about this question about this techno-oligarchy, I think that more or less will happen in different variations. Maybe. I don't want to make any deterministic claims here. I think we are basically observing the failures of democracy quite massively. That people don't feel represented, that it's very costly to enter the parliament, that you need to have connections, that not everybody has connections, that people that don't have connections become angry, and they are willing to vote for anything that teases their ears in a nice way. And this is very problematic. And so because of that, because nature and society hate vacuums, I think something else will come. And my prediction is, and of course the big question is what will happen with this, with all of us, right? This educated, large middle class. So what are we gonna do? And I think this is the big question. So. Any more questions? And here I have the summaries of what we have been discussing. So both static and dynamic solutions to the brain drain problem, and these models that you have seen are complementary to each other. We are in this Grundlagenvorlesung, we are thinking a lot about people, about mobility, the mobility of people, the mobility of nations, the mobility of ideas, and at the same time, orders, overlapping orders, rigid but also flexible orders. So, I hope I have contributed to this discussion this semester. Next week, it's again me. Yes, please?
Yeah, I only have one question. I don't understand why skilled workers never return.
What then?
I don't understand why skilled workers never return. So, for example,
once they go. So in this particular, we make it irreversible. Okay, so the question is?
I just need an explanation because, for example, if I think about it, I'm a skilled worker, maybe someday, who knows, or never. But when I go to another country, I'm experiencing, I understand, so I'm trying to learn the language, the culture, and everything. And as a skilled worker, I say, no, this is too hard for me, I want to go back to my home country. So in this case, it wouldn't be like that I never return, right?
There you're basically having certain values. I don't have culture, I don't have values here. I don't have how much money your mom or your dad has. If you have a beautiful apartment in St. Petersburg or on the coast of the Baltic Sea, why stay here? Of course not. I don't account for all these things. So if I have a house in Rhodes, in Greece, on the islands, whatever. So Yeah, I mean, so basically what you're saying is yes, you're right. I mean, besides the jokes, you're right. Culture, values also play a role, so behavioral elements. But this model can only do as much. I mean, we are basically here, yes.
So this means basically we only have from this work that we have like a groundwork, what we could work on in the future, right? So if I halfway conclusion and I would continue the study, I could add like culture.
You can add culture, yes. You can add culture. You can add family networks. You can add all sorts of things. You can add demography. Do your parents allow you to marry a foreigner? Yes or no? Maybe no. Who knows? Do your parents allow you to stay away from them for a very long time? Yes or no? Leon?
But isn't like also like this brain drain sometimes like this high qualified like workers who have like, I don't know, good school or university degree, go to another country and work there, and then they find out, for example, yeah, the taxes are so high, too high, or like I don't like the political or economic system of this country. Don't they like come back then sometimes to their home place? Isn't that also like cases which are like which have been seen in the last like years? For example, like the some Russian IT workers, as far as I've known. Maybe I'm like mistaken, but they like, for example, return to their home. It's like that. Because they found out, yeah, the taxes in Germany are too high and I need to work there.
Of course, nobody can beat Saudi Arabia or Dubai in taxes, right? They have zero. Saudi Arabia has zero. Yeah, true. I mean, but then this is connected. I mean, I think here we're making, I mean, you're right, but again, your point goes also in connection with the previous colleagues' point about culture, values, and what you value more as your own welfare. I mean, here we're just comparing in this model income in, income out, probability of going to jail in, freedom out. So it's a much simpler setup. Of course, I agree that values and integration play a very important role in the long run as well, obviously. And also to learn the language. I repeat that language acquisition is very, very important. Yes?
Yeah, I wanted to write, like, I don't have any data, but I think it would be interesting to follow in the next years what happened in Germany with foreign students that came to study in Germany and then decide and work maybe some years and then decide to leave because of the political context and most especially the foreign policy of Germany and the international support to Israel. I think that it affected a lot the community of foreign students, especially when we are talking about functioning democracy, when we see the repression of those foreign students. Even the Berlin Senate tried to expel European Union citizens because they protested against the genocide in Palestine. So I don't know if it already started, so it's kind of moved back to their countries of origins. But yeah, it's kind of political fiction or tradition that I
mean, in every country you have the political debates. I mean, in this country that has done what has done in the Second World War, of course, I would say, I don't say that I justify what happened in Gaza, but I also understand why some people are very sensitive in the other direction based on this country's political history. So, yeah, I mean, all countries, we live in a period where freedom of speech in general is restricted everywhere, if you want to be honest about it, where it is not. I mean, if you think about it, who can say everybody they want to think? They think, nobody. I don't do it. I don't say everything I think. And yeah, who does it? Seriously. We live in a dangerous period right now. You see what is happening with all this social media and so on. Yeah. So, yes? Yes?
Thank you. Okay. This is maybe more also a personal question to you, since you've done research on that topic and now presented to us. How do you see the theory or the game going forward in European democracies, especially with the background of decreasing birth rates and the need for new student labor?
So how the European democracy?
Yeah, well, it's evolved. broad topic, but I mean, in Europe, generally you can see, of course, you see the trend of increasing birth rates and so on, and more people go into pensions, and how do you...
So this means what? That you will have more conservative parties, because older people vote conservative. Older people want to have a party that will send their pensions home in the mailbox. That's what they want. So they will vote for parties that are conservative. So the older the electoral college becomes, the more conservative they're going to vote. And on the other hand, of course, this means, so this is one, and we observe this already, the whole world is becoming much more conservative. I mean, the rich world, I mean, the OECD world, North America and Western Europe, and some islands around the world outside. So everybody is becoming more conservative. So on the other hand, this brings again the question we have just discussed. Migration, I mean the broader picture, right? Brain drain is just one aspect of migration. So brain drain is basically a selective mechanism that channels skilled people, usually from dictatorships to democracies, but also from democracies that pay less to democracies that pay more, right? So theoretically, for example, this can be a window of opportunity for advanced democracies to bring qualified people from other parts of the world. But of course, the question is then the question that you've already mentioned, which is not captured by this game, the question of integration, which is of course also very, very important, because you don't want to have islands like like taking different pieces, putting them together and say this is a country, right? You want to have something common, uniting different pieces. So, and again, this is the important challenge, I think, for European democracies, the challenge of integration. Because clearly the US, that was the champion for the last 100 years in that, is failing now. Is moving in a completely different direction. So this comes again to us to do it. Yes?
I'm still losing my voice, so that's historical, but on that note, with integration, most high school workers who go to a new country don't have the opportunity to enter politics, or it's for a long time.
Don't have the opportunity?
To enter politics.
Yes.
So does your model tend to consider that taking the new wage opportunities in place of the potential to have a political say?
Yes, exactly. So you're absolutely right. Freya, I mentioned this before. Yes, exactly, because of course the benefit is the payoff from going to a better destination is higher. I mean, of course you are losing if you don't have the opportunity to enter politics in the country of your destination, at least for the first period, right? Of course, but this is something that is smoothened across generations, right? So, for example, see New York or see London. So there, you usually have, I mean, so you have local leaders of migration background always, right? So, particularly the Italians in the US have a very interesting story of how they were able to enter. And the Irish, of course. The Irish even more than the Italians.
I have one more question.
Yes.
You said that we're becoming more conservative.
Yes.
In terms of copying America, maybe, do you see it that it is the West copying America if they want?
I don't think we are copying America because I think we have different problems than the US. I think because we have a different, as I said before, we have a different economic model, and we don't have the inequality that the US does. I mean, if you've been in the US, if you go to California and New York on the one hand, and if you go to Mississippi and Nebraska on the other hand, you don't think you're in the same country. Here, Europe, of course there are differences, but you have something basic everywhere, the basis. I think that, I think that we are experiencing more or less a failure of the political center to motivate the middle class. I think that the question of mobility is very important. I think the expectation of reward as a function of effort. I think this is a very important thing that, that we're currently missing. I mean, in the US, yes, you don't have the mobility that you used to. The American dream doesn't exist anymore. It's impossible to go there, be a dishwasher in Bronx, and then get a big flat in Manhattan in 20 years. That's not going to happen. Then the question is, what is Europe? How Europe is going to respond to this? And I think this is basically what, we have some similarities with the US, but I think we have other certain advantages as societies that can make us escape that trap.